general, Foliar diseases, they are not like big killers. It's not gonna be like the laurel wilt that we discussed that before, and but it still has variable impacts on the trees, and so we have some on conifers and hardwood. And to begin with, that's needle cast. I think Jason just talked about that. It can be caused by a lot of different fungal species, and what you can see is like the fruiting body on the needles. So you're gonna have a look at the black structures. It's not always easy. I mean, you just bought some samples, and we are not still sure if it's needle cast or not. So sometimes you just have to wait the good moment to see them. And the fruiting structures, they are called acerulae. And when they're gonna crack open, it's gonna release the spores, and the spores are gonna infect other needles. So a lot of different fungal species on a lot of different hosts. And why is it called needle cast? It's like when the needles are infected, it's gonna cast infected needles. So for example, this one, we got that like 2 days ago from this tree company, and it seems to be an emergent disease. We still don't know what it is actually. So we are working on trying to isolate the fungi in a plate on the media to grow it, and work on the DNA and have more info on it, because it seems to be an emergent disease. So again, a lot of different species that can cause needle cast.
So will those turn all the way brown in a little while, or like how long does it take to go all the way down?
Yeah, I guess it can take like several. First it's gonna turn yellow, and after it's gonna turn brown, and the tree is gonna die. And you can end with, if it's bad, yeah, you can end with something like that. That's pretty bad. And after, new growth is gonna come back. It's gonna have the tree is gonna have a weird aspect, like tufted. Yeah, that's how you can recognize as well it's needle cast. That's the pine needle rust. So it's a rust. You can see the structure here. Like the small tubes, right? And again, these small tubes are gonna open, and it's gonna release the spores and infect new needles. The impact is really limited on pine. It's not gonna decrease the yield or anything. And but as several, I think Jason's talked about that, but rusts have a life cycle kind of elaborated. So this rust is gonna need the Asteraceae plants to alternate them. I forgot the name. The gold something. And yes, thank you.
Heteroecious?
Yes. Yeah.
When it needs another plant to...
So heteroecious means it needs another host to alternate.
Yeah.
When macrocyclic, you heard this word as well, macrocyclic. It means that because rust can have different life stages, and maximum is like 5 stages with 5 different types of spores. So when the life cycle requires 5 different types of spore, it's called macrocyclic. This one is not macrocyclic because it just requires 2 different types of spores. I don't know if you saw that with Jason already, but rust are a big group of plant pathogens. It's the biggest actually. So it's really diverse. But that's not a big pathogen on pine.
And every stage adapt to like the weather. Like there is spores that are overwinter, so when it's cold, it forms that kind of spore. When it's in the other coast, it has another spore. So it's like it adapts to whatever is in the environment. Oh, sorry.
All right, so hardwoods now. So that's oak leaf blister. It's caused by an ascomycete fungi. I got this morning. It's not the best sample because it's kind of early in the season. It requires like more humidity, more heat. But you can see on the leaves why it's called blister. So every year you're gonna see that's really common on all oak species around here. And you can see that the leaf spots are looking like blisters. And at the end of the season, eventually, all the blisters are gonna merge, and it's gonna make a bigger spot.
But it doesn't kill it. It doesn't kill the tree.
It's really, it's more cosmetic than anything.
Yeah.
That one's really common because I see that all the time.
Yeah, it's very common here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one doesn't kill the tree?
No,
Oh,
definitely
okay.
not. The trees actually, most of the time, I believe that the tree is gonna manage to heal over that. So you're gonna see scars on the leaves, but it's not gonna kill the tree.
Is that part of it?
No, that's a girl.
Does that reduce photosynthetic
What?
capacity?
Oh.
Huh?
Does that reduce photosynthetic capacity at all?
Oh, I guess it has like a small impact. So you can see why it's called powdery mildew, right? Because the mycelium looks like powder on the surface of the leaf. I tried to find some sample, but again, it's too early in the season because I mean today is kind of hot actually, but it's not warm enough yet. And there are a lot of different species, but each species is pretty specialized on the host. But you can find that on hardwoods, herbaceous species, everything. But, and a way to also diagnose mildew, powdery mildew, is the black structures here, like the fruiting body. They are like sexual structure, and it's specific to powdery mildew. It's called Cleistotaceae. I don't know if we have to go in so much details, but when you look in the microscope, it's actually pretty pretty, and it's a really good feature to diagnose which genera you are dealing with. So look for the white mycelium, and potentially, if it's the good time of the season, the sexual structure.
So trees can get that as well, like large trees.
Yeah. More likely, it's gonna affect like young tissue though,
Right.
like the new growth, and you're gonna see like some leaf distortion. Eventually, some leaves are gonna like die, but the tree is gonna be okay, definitely. Vectorized, you say? By insects that are feeding on the xylem. Vector?
It needs a vector, yeah.
It needs an insect.
Uh-huh.
The insects are actually feeding in the xylem of the leaves, and they are carrying the bacteria, and it's impacting the species that are belonging to the Rosaceae again. So, well, here we don't have really apples or pears because of the climate, but it's a pretty big deal on hawthorn again. And the batting, it's gonna impact the fruit as well. But a way to diagnose that is like the stem is gonna turn black. We don't have good fresh sample. It's not the good season for it. But you can recognize it because stems are gonna turn black, and the leaves are gonna remain actually. Even if it's dead, the leaves are gonna remain on the branch. And the branch is gonna have a specific shape like a shepherd's crook, like this. So if you see that at the end of a tree and it's looking pretty bad, it can be fire blight. It's not that easy to diagnose though.
So if you keep saying that it's not the right season for it, does that mean the trees can like recover during the off season for these fungus? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
Bacteria.
definitely.
It's a bacteria.
But
that's
this
it.
one is a bacteria actually.
And the insect affect first the flower, and then it spray. it gets to the flower and then spread the bacteria.
Yeah, yeah, through the flowers and wounds as well.
Okay.
You said that's for apples and pears, so it's for
Some actually. It's pretty good samples. Okay, so this one, you know it. Tar spot. You can see why it's called tar spot. It's called, the fungi is called Ritisma, and it's affecting a lot of different trees. Not a big deal. It's really a cosmetic problem more than anything, an ornamental species. The tree is having that all the time, and it's gonna be okay. It's pretty cool looking, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's a perspective matter. But you can see why, ornamentally speaking, it can be a problem. A lot of hosts.
Aesthetics. Just aesthetics, you said.
Say again?
Just aesthetics.
Yeah, just
but it
aesthetics.
affects-
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you walk, I mean, I'm sure if you find a leaf on the ground right behind you, you're gonna see some. It's really common. So again, most of the foliar pathogens are not big killers. It's not like Phytophthora or. But I think it's important to be able to diagnose them. Of cedar apple rust.
Oh,
The
that's
other
cool,
rust.
though.
Ah,
I haven't heard of it, but it looks cool.
yeah, it's cool. So the most spectacular aspect of it is definitely these galls that you're gonna find on the juniper trees here. So that's, the rust again, different types of spores and different hosts. Here we have two hosts. The Rosaceae species, like apple, and the juniper. So that's why it's called cedar apple rust. And you're gonna find these galls on the juniper.
But when they're fresh, they look like this. It's like a hair, orange hair thing. I don't know.
So, and actually, if you put that in water, you're gonna see the horns, the horns like growing like that.
That's cool.
And it's pretty cool.
So you said?
But this guy is not gonna, again, even the branch is not gonna die. It's just gonna grow. But the problem is on the Rosaceae host, because you can see the spots, and it can have a bigger impact. The main impact is on the apple, or pear, or other species of the family.
So that's the gall after you've wet it or put it in water?
Yeah, it's not that impressive actually.
Oh.
It can be like really the extreme example is that. It's pretty spectacular, but it's nothing terrible for the juniper. Let's get rid of some. Sycamore, right? Sycamore on Fragnose, another ascomycete fungi. So you can recognize the disease by the necrosis around the veins here, right? And eventually, when it's getting bad, it's gonna merge, and the whole leaf is gonna be impacted. And it can be like, you can see from far, if a tree is really impacted, this one is actually pretty significant, and it can be bad for the tree.
This was called sycamore what? Sycamore...
Anthracnose.
Is that related to anthrax fungus?
No. I believe anthracnose diseases, it's when it's around the veins, but I have to check. And so what's happening, it's like during winter, it's overwintering in the soil, in the debris. Then spores are gonna infect the stems. Some stems are gonna die, and fruiting bodies are gonna arise from the stem, and the released spores are gonna infect the leaves. That's how it goes. Until the leaf die, goes in the ground, and that's the cycle. But it's pretty easy to recognize, and because it's around the veins on the leaves. And if you have a good eye, you can find the actual fruiting bodies on the petiole of the leaves and on the stem, but not on this one. This one I know a bit more about it because I'm working on it for my PhD. You know hornbeam and hornbeam trees, Carpinus and Australia. This one is a Carpinus, and in fall 2018 we observed like some rust on the hornbeam trees around here. Like first it was in loblolly woods, and I wasn't really shocked, but Jason was, because he knows well the region. He was like, this is new, we've never seen that before. So we sampled trees and I got some DNA, and I got some result, and it was showing like it was like Melampsoridium rust. Melampsoridium, it's the name of the genus, doesn't really matter, but and it's indeed something new. But when you go into the database, it says it's a species from Europe. So we are like, okay, but it's kind of weird because the host doesn't really correspond to that. So we had to go to the morphology of it. And when you do some microscopy observations and you look at the spores, so that's what you are looking at, but in that scanning electron microscopy, it allows to get some really cool pictures. And if you go to the details, you can see that that's the one we have here in Gainesville, and that's the one in Europe. And here you can see there is like a bold apex, right? You don't see the ornamentations here. And here they are. So that's two different species. So we are like, where is it coming from? Thank you. And because we don't have a lot of data, because we don't have a lot of information in the database, you have to request herbarium specimens of the rust all over the world, and you can compare the morphology. And it seems that it may come from Central America, like Guatemala, Costa Rica. And it might have came through storms from there, like hurricanes. Sometimes they're in the Gulf. They are bringing the spores here in US, and the climate is kind of adapted for that. So yeah, and it's pretty bad because we got some people calling from Tennessee, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, and they all have this since 1-2 years.
This one's pretty bad. Is this one, kill the tree? Or?
So yeah, so actually I saw the first infection last week with you guys by the lake, and if you see now, it's not bad because all the leaves dropped anyway. But since 2 weeks it's growing back, and I've seen the spores on it. But if you look like after summer or fall, some trees are almost totally defoliated. When you have like severe infection like that, it's not gonna be pretty for sure. And also, we saw that the seedlings are impacted. So if ultimately it's gonna defoliate the seedlings, you can guess that the regeneration is not gonna be great. And what's new for the genus as well, it's impacting the samaras, the fruits of the tree. You see the samaras here with the wings, and the
European and the South American one don't do that?
No, it's the first time we report infection on the fruits. So you can guess as well it's pretty bad for the species, because the samaras, they have like a photosynthetic activity. So if it's impacted, it's going to impact the fruit production and the regeneration and the the species ultimately. So that's pretty new. So we don't have. I had good samples this morning because I got a branch with an old leaf from last season that was still carrying the spores and the new leaves as well. So basically, you can guess that the leaves from the spores from the old leaves are gonna infect the new leaves. Because like a lot of rust, usually it requires an alternate host. But here we don't have this. So I think you just, because here the climate allows, leaves to coexist from last year and this year, that's how it reinfects, and it is gonna be around a lot. But you can guess that in where it's coming from, in Central America, you are gonna find the two hosts. But here it requires only, apparently it requires one host only to survive in southeastern US. So more to come soon on that, I hope, because I have to graduate. And I think that's all
it.
we have.